Chapter 1. Brotherhood. An idea I'm planning on developing a bit before shipping out to boot camp. Based on Star Wars. Where we are going always reflects where we came from. It started with a dream. A single man next to him, whispering. At first, he didn't even remember. But then the voices started appearing in his head. Just one, then two, then more. Until all day he was plagued with them. He was already quirkless. He didn't want to be known as crazy too. But the voices comforted him, stood by him. When nobody else would, when his best friend became his tormentor, and when his mother denied him. They whispered comforts, appreciation, encouragement, and approval, constantly reminding him, "You can be a hero. You will be a hero." Then one day, he appeared. Izuku was 4 when he got his quirk, but he was 10 when he finally found out. Izuku was at first scared, as all children are when a random person who looked exactly like you appeared in your room. Naturally, Izuku's innate curiosity overwhelmed that fear. "Who are you?" "Well, finally I'm out of there." "Hi Izuku, I'm your quirk," the doppelganger said, only to pause as Izuku immediately froze and fainted. Well, that could have gone better. After getting over the initial shock, happiness, tears, more shock, happiness, and tears from Inko, and then even more tears, they all managed to sit together in the living room and talk. "So let me get this straight, my son has been listening to voices for years and never told me, and it turns out it's his quirk?" Inko was devastated. Her own son hadn't trusted her enough to talk about what was happening for the last 6 years of his life. "Yep, we've been inside his, I guess you could say, mindscape. Most of them are asleep, I guess you could say. Right now Izuku's only strong enough to bring me out, but eventually, we might be able to summon others. Who knows? Maybe even an entire army. No villain's gonna want to mess with that," the clone said as he started chuckling. Inko felt like the experience was surreal. It was as if she'd had twins instead, and both with completely opposite personalities. "But I always hear their voices?" Izuku asked as he leaned forward. He had grabbed a fresh journal for this one, but had yet to name it, too excited at the idea of writing about his own quirk. "Some of them wake up from time to time. They like seeing through your eyes. We've always been in your corner, Izuku," the copy said with a sad smile on his face. Izuku immediately knew what exactly that smile meant. "Okay, do you have a name?" Not really. I have a designation, like a number that popped into my head. One time when you were looking through some American military-based heroes, I came up with an entire thing. CT 00-0001. CT for Clone Trooper, since I'm a clone and well, I like the word trooper," he explained with a grin. "Yeah, no way am I calling you that. You're not just a clone. You're not just my quirk. You're me, just a bit different. So you gotta have a name." Izuku said passionately. He didn't want to be like other people with sentient quirks who disregarded them. 01 was surprised but smiled at the thought. "All right then, but what should my name be? And it better not be a reiteration of All Might. I saw enough of those when you were a kid, mighty boy," he teased. Izuku flushed red. As much as he admired All Might, even he had to admit that those names were kind of cringy. "I don't know. I think you should decide. I mean, it's your name," Izuku mumbled out. 01 nodded at the good point and started to think about it. Unfortunately, he also had Izuku's mumbling habit. "Is this what it feels like? So similar." He snapped his fingers and smiled at both of them. "I choose Django." "Django? That's so cool." Inko just smiled at the two, though now she did wonder if she was going to have to take care of 2 growing boys instead of just one, or more if Django was right. Oh dear. Anyways, in celebration of finally getting your quirk, how about I make Katsudon? Inko was immediately met with the excited cries of 2 10-year-old boys for their favorite food. The following visit to the doctor's was a very joyous event for the family. Officially labeling his quirk as clone, with the understanding that it could be updated later if it proved true that more clones could come out, and the added note of him being the second oldest late bloomer recorded. The first being some Yagi kid 40 years ago. Despite this, however, Kaken was not so excited at seeing worthless Deku with a quirk. It seemed to have shaken him because immediately after class he confronted Izuku with his lackeys and started to bully him. "You think that just 'cause you got a quirk you can stand up to me, Deku? You're nothing." The blonde went with his hands already crackling. Izuku was already crying, his hopes of finally being accepted by his childhood friend being shattered in front of his eyes. On that day, things stayed the same, and yet things changed. Katsuki's prejudice stayed the same, as well as his assumptions, automatically assuming that a clone of Izuku would mean the same weakness to violence. Unfortunately for him, Django was not Izuku, even though he was a clone, and he did not like Bakugo Katsuki. So in true fanboy fashion, he copied a move that both boys saw All Might do on TV, and cold-clocked Katsuki in the jaw. The young boy was out like a light, and seeing their illustrious leader unconscious on the ground, lost any courage they had and ran away. "Blasted Pomeranian," Django grumbled as he shook his hand, turning to Izuku, who could only stare in shock and pant as the adrenaline left his system. He had fallen on his rear while backing away and was still shaking. Django grimaced at the sight, but promised to himself that he would help Izuku get better. "Come on, VOD, let's go home," he said while pulling Izuku up and then walked him home. Once reaching their room, with promises of explaining everything to Mom later, Django set Izuku on the bed and let him weep for the friendship that was lost and the dream that came with it. Later, after explaining everything to Mom, Izuku and Django sat together in bed, Izuku taking comfort in who was probably his only friend. "How sad. What was it you called me earlier? VOD something? HM? Oh, VOD. I was thinking of the future, you know? If we're gonna be heroes, and we get more clones, we're gonna need to come up with strategies and stuff, and I was thinking of creating a language, just for us. What's it called? I'm Callan at Mando A. Cool. What does VOD mean? It means brother. Teach me." Of course. Chapter 2. The Road to Greatness. Legion. It is a rough road that leads to the heights of greatness. In the years that passed by, Izuku stayed unfortunately alone. Children can be very fickle. Regardless of the fact that Izuku now had a quirk, he was still treated very much the same. Although thanks to Django's support, he managed to handle himself. Django helped him realize that a hero had to be both smart and strong in order to save people. So they both started to work out together. Unfortunately, Inko didn't have the money at the moment to send them to a martial arts class. Nobody believed them when they said that Django was a quirk, or if they did, still tried to charge them for two. It made some sense, but at the same time, come on. And whenever Katsuki's inferiority/superiority complex reared its ugly head, they could always count on each other. Sometimes they won, sometimes they lost. They grew together, however, and made sure to learn from their losses. While Izuku still had a small part of him that held out for Katsuki to grow up, he stayed realistic and realized that the blonde's decisions were his own. Unfortunately, Katsuki's influence over their peers was still great, especially due to his own explosion quirk, and as such, nobody really wanted to be friends with Izuku. For now, however, that was fine. He had Django and the voices inside his head to help him. Wow, does that make him sound insane? Anyways, all of that came to a head one fateful school day. Legion, all right, it's your third year, and I have to give you all these career packets, but I'm pretty sure you all want to go to the hero course, their teacher said, throwing papers into the air as the entire classroom started showing off their quirks. Izuku refrained, however, as the phrase that could describe his and Bakugo's relationship was on sight. Said teen in true Bakugo fashion, let off an explosion to catch everybody's attention, and then loudly began to proclaim his own ambitions. Izuku was in the middle of writing down some questions and notes in his most recent hero journal over the newest hero that had just debuted, MT Lady. It was only the fact that the last few years had given him great situational awareness that he pushed his desk forward while pulling his journal back and driving the desk into Katsuki's chest as he left off explosions. Gufka. Damn it, Deku. He screamed as Django appeared. Look who's talking. You feeling lucky? Punk. Django sneered as he got ready for a fight. Izuku immediately stood as well, and the three were in a standoff. What's the meaning of this, Bakugo? Izuku asked tensely. The hell you think? Trying to join UA and ruin my record? Get real. Where I go as doesn't matter to you, Bakugo. Get your head out of your ass and leave us alone.
Ah?
You want to start something, Deku? Start something?
No.
But you know that we'll finish it. He replied with a cold glare. Sometimes it still hurt to see how far his old friend had fallen. The three tensed, ready to fight then and there. But finally, their teacher interrupted and sent them back to their seats. Later, once class was over, Izuku was putting his stuff away when a hand grabbed his shoulder. Bakugo smirked, but that soon fell off his face when another hand grabbed his wrist. Again the boys were in a standoff, and all three were glaring at each other. Che, you better not think about applying to UA, Deku. You and your useless quirk got no chance against me. Katsuki sneered. As I said, screw off. You have no power over me, Bakugo. The unspoken anymore rested between them. Bakugo's hand smoked, the beginning of an explosion begging to be released, but Izuku stared hard at him, already used to the pain. Bakugo scoffed before heading towards the door. You know, if you really want to be a hero, how about you take a swan dive off the roof and pray for a more useful quirk? This time, it was Izuku, not Django, who lunged. Legion. Izuku and Django were walking home, the former bruised and burnt, the latter mostly bruised. Okay, I'm not complaining, but that's the first time I've ever seen you go on site with that D-cut. He didn't just insult me, he insulted you when you're the best thing that ever happened to me. You and the rest, well, once I finally meet them. I couldn't stand that. The two continued walking and Django smiled before he paused. Do you hear that? A couple of meat sacks, shame I'll only need one. A sludge-like being rose out of the sewers and attacked Django, quickly enveloping him and going down his throat. Ghizukurg. Django. The sludge villain threw out a tendril and smacked Izuku away as Django struggled. Acting quickly, Izuku called back Django and sent him to the mindscape, the sludge that was in his body falling to the ground. What the dash? A teleportation quirk? That would have been so useful against him. Crap, I don't have time for this, you'll do? He said as he charged at Izuku. In a flash, however, Django reappeared and went for the eye. Over here, Shabir. Gah. My eye. Lashing out, he knocked Django into Izuku, and both were knocked over. You little bastard. I'll kill you both. The sewer lid popped. Not so fast. All parties gasped. It's too late. Never fear, for I am here. The titan of a man rose from the sewers and cocked his fist back. Texas dash. No, wait.
Smash.
As if the forces of nature were at his beck and call, All Might's fist punched forward and unleashed a windstorm, so strong the villain was splattered away. Two boys could only stare in awe at seeing the greatest hero in Japan before them. My apologies, young men. I didn't mean to get you involved with my work. Unfortunately, I'm new here, and this dastardly fellow evaded me in the sewer system. My most humble apologies. The hero smiled as he pulled the two up. Quicker to get over his shock, Django was the first to respond. It's big deal, All Might. At least you saved us in time. That stuff was disgusting, Bleg. Django coughed out some spit. While the dematerialization did help him get the sludge out of his system, it did nothing for the lingering taste. All Might nodded and also slightly shuddered. He'd had more than his share of unwanted substances in his mouth. Turning to the other boy in front of him, just now he noticed they were identical in appearance, twins? He raised a brow at his silence. Django turned and chuckled. Oh, don't mind him. He's just probably having a fangasm of epic proportions. Come on, VOD, make something of yourself, he said while lightly tapping Izuku on the head. Said boy flushed and shook himself before stuttering and mumbling out an odd response. Finally gaining his bearings, he smiled and bowed. Thank you for saving us. Django cackled. Izuku punched him. Ha ha ha. Well, like he said, thanks for saving us. This is Izuku, and I'm Django. A pleasure to meet you both. Now, if you'll excuse, I must put away this villain and get him to the authorities. All Might said as he turned and began piling sludge into a soda bottle. Let us help, All Might. Least we can do, Django said as he and Izuku started to help, Django took a certain vindictive pleasure in throwing All Might the eyeballs. So young ones, are you two planning to be heroes? Yep, planning to go for UA. My old alma mater then? Well, I certainly hope you two make it. Now if you'll excuse me, I must be off. Have a nice day. All Might yelled out as he jumped into the air, leaving two smiling boys. I'm totally rubbing this into Bakugo's face. Yeah. Wait, no. Izuku fell to his knees in shock and dismay. His life was over as he knew it. Django quickly reached him and asked what was wrong. I forgot to ask for an autograph. Izuku. Legion. Walking home with a depressed Izuku, Django called Inko and let them know they were on the way home. The sounds of explosions and fire, however, brought the spark back into Izuku's eyes and quickly ran over there, leaving Django behind.
Dankfertig, Izuku.
He yelled out and ran after him. Reaching the scene of the crime, they both were shocked at seeing the same villain that had attacked them loose and causing so much destruction, heroes around him helpless to do anything. What the hell is happening? We helped All Might put that thing away. How'd it escape? The bottle must have flown out, or maybe his pants ripped. I doubt that they were made for going at Mach's stupid high speed. The two boys made their way to the front of the crowd and were still in shock. It's been like this for a while. Wasn't All Might going after that guy? All Might? Where is he then? They continued to murmur and the fires continued to grow. The sludge monster turned and Izuku's eyes met Bakugo's. In a burst of motion, he blasted through the crowd and tape line, sprinting as fast as he could towards him regardless of the heroes calling him to come back.
Dankfertig, Izuku.
Come back here. Django yelled as he ran towards Izuku. You too. Not again. Izuku, without any thought for himself, threw his backpack and nailed the same eye that Django had grabbed earlier, the impact stunning the villain long enough for Bakugo to breathe. With a gasp and a cough, Bakugo demanded to know why he was there. I don't know. My body just moved on its own. You're an ass, but I can't let you die. Izuku yelled as he started tugging on Bakugo's arms. The villain raised a tendril and prepared to smack it down, only for a rock to hit his eye and distract him. Screaming in pain, he paid no attention to the second boy running down towards him. Izuku, duck! Django cried. Jumping over his brother, he took advantage of the opportunity given to him and delivered a well-placed dropkick on Bakugo, serving not only to knock him out of the sludge villain's grasp, but also make him hack up whatever sludge had gone down his throat. If he took a certain vindictive pleasure in doing so through a dropkick, well, who was going to say anything? The sludge villain had regained his bearing and lashed out once more on Izuku. This time, however, it was stopped by a large arm with a familiar face. All Might. It seems we meet again, boys, and let me say you're truly an inspiration. All stood in awe as the man effortlessly held back the villain. Now let me finish things up. Detroit Dash. He cocked his fist back and the sludge villain's eyes widened in fear. New.
Smash.
Once again the villain was scattered across the street and fast winds buffeted the crowd. Izuku, Django, and Katsuki ended up being pinned to the ground and a tornado reached the sky. Just as soon as the winds started did they end. And it began to rain. As everybody began to exclaim at All Might's power, Izuku couldn't help but look at the man in front of him, standing tall with his fist raised high. Steam wafting off of his body, blood dribbling down his chin. Something was wrong. Legion. Later, after getting scolded/commended by heroes for interfering, Izuku was walking home with Django, although they'd had an odd interaction with Bakugo that they both decided to just ignore. Django called him a discount tsundere. Izuku had to take a deep breath to process that one. Both were startled at the appearance of All Might. All Might. Haha, yes, I am here, Dobleg. Oh crap. The now skeletal man said as the three stared at each other. You know, I suspected that you were hurt, but to this extent? Izuku questioned while tilting his head. That's all you gotta say? Freakin' All Might just smirk. Django was cut off as Izuku covered his face with his hand and held him down. Keep it down, Django. I seriously doubt that this is something that should be yelled out. Cut. Izuku said as he held his struggling clone. Come on, let's go somewhere more private. Follow me, sir. Izuku pointed with his head and dragged Django, who at that point was more or less just following along in shock. You seem to be very unfazed, young man. Oh, believe me. Heherm. I am very much in shock and panicking, but it's yet to fully register. They ended up heading to a nearby park. Fortunately, at this time, there weren't any people. At first, they simply sat in silence, as both boys stared at the emaciated man in front of them. How long? Izuku asked first. All Might, and wasn't it jarring to call this man that name? Sighed before replying. It's been about 5 years. I got wounded, and the subsequent surgeries and recovery period turned me to this. No villain you've ever fought could have done that much damage to you. Even Toxic Chainsaw only managed to give you a few bruises and make your nose bleed. This was something else, wasn't it? A fight that wasn't publicized. A villain so strong only you could have had a chance of beating. Am I right? Izuku analyzed and asked, startling the older man. That's right. You wouldn't by chance have some analysis or mental quirk, would you? Izuku chuckled but shook his head. Nah, that's all him. He's a hero nerd through and through. Django pointed his head towards his brother with a smirk, but that soon gave way to a more somber expression. But I'm guessing that's also the reason why you're only active for a few hours a day, huh? All Might nodded sadly. I lost my stomach and half my respiratory system, and right now I can only do hero work for 3 hours a day.
Dankfertig.
Django muttered. Izuku began to softly weep. Why All Might? You could have retired. Sure, things would be difficult, but we'd manage. Why hurt yourself like this? All Might gave a soft smile in return. Because when I became a hero, I made a promise to help others and keep their smiles alive through my own. I became a hero because I knew that Japan needed a symbol of peace, and I smile through the pain because every day I continue working is another person I can save. He chuckled, and after all, it is because of my resolve that we stand here today. Izuku smiled and bowed. Thank you, not just for saving us, but for everything you've done, All Might. Django also bowed in turn, and All Might was touched by their actions. But, I have to ask, why did you come after us? I came here because I was inspired by your actions, young man. I was there in the crowd but felt that I could not do anything because my time was up. Then I overheard you saying to that boy, your body moved on its own right? Che, this idiot's always getting into trouble before his mind even catches up. Django chuckled out while punching Izuku. Izuku rolled his eyes and returned Django's punch. That is one of the hallmark traits of a true hero and starts the story for many. I am here today because I was inspired to act by you, to push beyond my limits. You reminded me of what it meant to be a hero, and for that I'm thankful. Izuku was freely crying in joy at having been an inspiration to his idol. Even Django couldn't help but tear up a bit. His VOD was definitely on the way to greatness. This next part one will tell you, however, is very important and extremely classified. Tell me, young man, how well do you trust your friend here? At this, the both of them started to laugh, which was a good sign to All Might. Well, All Might, I think it'd be hard not to trust my own quirk. Yes, they seem to be the best of... Wait, what?
I'm sorry.
He was very befuddled right now. Allow us to introduce ourselves. I'm Midoriya Izuku, and this is Midoriya Django Dash. Django tried to protest. No matter how much you deny it, you're still a Midoriya, Django. Anyway, technically, he is my quirk Dash. What do you mean technically? I am your quirk Dash. Stop interrupting me. My quirk is called Clone. I can create clones of myself, but so far I've been limited to manifesting Django. I've got about a couple thousand in my head, but they're asleep and I can't bring them out yet. A couple thousand. So yeah, whatever you gotta say, you can say it to us. Alright then. Let me tell you about my quirk. It's called One for All. Legion. Okay. Did he expect to be a part of one of the greatest kept secrets in history?
No.
Was he honored? Yes. Did he regret agreeing to this insane training plan? Most definitely. But a chance to be All Might's successor was too good to pass up, along with the potential to boost his quirk and access more clones. While it did feel like cheating at the beginning, Django was quick to put a stop to it. As far as I see it, heroes use any and all tools at their disposal. If this helps you out, then it doesn't matter. All that matters at the end are the people you save. Of course, that didn't mean that it didn't suck to be lugging around All Might on top of a fridge. I think I made it an inch. Come on, young Midoriya. Let's move it. Oh well, nothing ventured, nothing gained. Of course, thanks to the workouts he and Django did, they were physically fit, just simply not strong enough. All Might was working with him to develop more muscle, so that he could handle One for All without busting his limbs. He had a feeling it'd be a lot worse if he hadn't worked out. Soon enough, however, he and Django did it, and Dagobah Municipal Beach was rendered clean once more. 3 months to spare too. Standing before All Might and bathed by the rays of the early morning sun, Izuku and Django had their heads high with pride at their accomplishment. Both of you have made me very proud. I am truly glad to have met you all those months ago. You have rendered a great service not only to the community but to yourselves and your future careers. Yes, that means you too, young Django. All Might said as he plucked a hair from his head. Django smiled brightly, tears pricking the edges of his eyes. Izuku was smiling brightly. Fortunately, tears were absent. Now remember this, both of you, something I was once told. Something that you receive because you're lucky and something you are given because you are recognized are different in essence. Take that to heart. They both nodded and All Might extended his hand. Now, Izuku puffed up in apprehension. How exactly could a quirk be passed on? Eat this. I'm sorry, but what? Django asked in pure disbelief as Izuku was currently frozen. In order to get my power, you have to ingest some of my DNA, that's how it works. All Might sheepishly said while rubbing the back of his head. Wow, never took you for a pedo, All Might.
Black.
Said man, coughed up blood in shock.
What?
I mean, here you are having a boy taken some of your DNA after preparing him for months. Seems kinda is to me. Django shrugged, while All Might looked at him in disbelief. Izuku was still frozen. I mean, I guess that's why you picked the both of us up? His eye was twitching. Must have a twin fetish too. What? No, that's not dash poof. The sheer shock actually caused All Might to transform back to his skinny form. It had the added effect of making him look like an understuffed plush doll. Noticing Django's barely concealed chuckles made him scowl. Very funny, young Django. Django started to cackle. It was too much for him to handle. Finally, however, he plucked the hair from All Might's hand and popped open Izuku's jaw before shoving it down his throat. Ake. Ray.
Jijango.
Blurg. Nope, close your mouth. Do what All Might wants you to do, and swallow. Don't say it like that. All Might hissed. Finally forced to swallow, Izuku shuddered in revulsion after the last feelings of nausea left him. He could even feel nausea from his brothers in the mindscape. Well, now that that's done, let's get something to wash that down. Unless you want the taste of Old Spice to stay in your mouth. Django remarked as he started to walk up the stairs. How do you know what shampoo I use? All Might, I can smell it from here. Plus, it's like the most American thing you could do, Westaboo. He mumbled out. All Might could only sputter. What happened to the nice young man who respected his every word and stared at him in awe? He was starting to doubt if clone should even be the right term to describe Izuku's quirk. They certainly weren't identical personality-wise. Soon enough, however, they moved along to catch up with Django and deal with the aftertaste. Yeah, it probably would have been better to skip the Old Spice today. Legion. A few hours later, and they were back on the beach ready to test out Izuku's new power and see if it could help out with clone. All right then, let's give her a whirl. Calling upon the power is simple. Just clench your butt cheeks, and from the depths of your heart yell out a smash. You're really not helping your case there, All Might. Django pointed out with a deadpan expression. Izuku just had his face in his hands, lightly shaking his head. I mean, first the ingesting of DNA, forcefully too dash. That was you. Now you're talking about butt cheeks and smashing. Shut up, Django. Izuku whispered out. All Might's grin became more and more strained until he finally had enough. All right, I get it. Let's just move on. he mumbled out. He then motioned to Izuku and gave a wave of his hand. Just go, young Izuku. Izuku felt for him. He really did. There was a reason why it was on site between Django and Bakugo, and it wasn't the fights. Izuku walked forward to the edge of the beach and looked inside himself. At first, he couldn't feel anything, but soon he saw it, a spark inside of him that quickly grew to a roaring inferno. Cocking his fist back, he pivoted and moved forward. SMA dash.
Stop.
Izuku stumbled and blacked out as a cacophony erupted in his head. The last things he heard were All Might and Django coming to his aid. Legion. At first, it was dark, and while he could see, it was as if he was looking through a blindfold, the slightest bit of light piercing through. Not yet, but one day. Honestly, Toshi, clench your butt cheeks and yell out smash. It does sound like something a pedophile would. Smack. Ow. Wake up, Ninth. You will see us again soon. These voices, they don't sound like me. Izuku thought as he continued to stare in the darkness. Wake up, Orivioti. And he did. Izuku. He heard and he opened his eyes, focusing. He was met with All Might's worried face in an unfamiliar room. Oh no, Django was right. You even took me to your house. Izuku deliriously mumbled out. Black. Not you too. If you must know you're at UA, I brought you here after you passed out. All Might replied after spitting out more blood. Django was a horrible influence. Izuku groaned as he sat up, feeling the remnants of the mother of all headaches. Seemed like he was on some good meds. Where's Django? After you collapsed, he dematerialized, a certainly interesting flash of light to be sure. I brought you here immediately. Can you tell me what happened? I'll tell you what happened. What happened is that Izuku's a D-cut. Django said as he reappeared. When did you get here? All Might asked. I summoned him back. I can do it without the flash. Stealth, right? Izuku mumbled out. So what happened? What happened is that his little stunt woke up all the clones, 'cause all of them knew that he was about to bust his arm by going 100%. Also, where the hell are we? This isn't your house, is it? All Might? Django asked as he sat down.
No.
This is UA. Stop insinuating that. Hee, relax, I know. So your quirk acted as an early warning system, so that you wouldn't break your body with one for all? Is that right, Sonny? Yep. Izuku absent-mindedly said before his eyes snapped open and he jerked his head up. The action obviously caused even more pain. Ow. Relax, my boy. Recovery Girl knows our shared secret. She's helped me out a lot of times throughout the years. All Might said as he let Izuku lie down again. It's a good thing, too. Otherwise, this American bumpkin would have died years ago. So you tried to use OFA and almost broke your arm. As it is, your muscles were torn simply by activating it. So however, or whatever you did that time. Stop. The sheer gravity in that last word caused everybody else in that room to shudder in fear. Don't worry, Recovery Girl. I don't plan to. Izuku groaned out. Anything to avoid a headache like that again. Yeah, the VOD are all sorry that that happened. But in fairness, everybody panicked and decided to let you know at the same time, Django explained while putting a hand on Izuku's shoulder. Well, at least I have time to figure this out. Yeah, imagine if we had less time. Or worse if you got the quirk on the day of the entrance exam. That sounds like some shounen anime MCBS. Aren't we basically an anime right now? Quirks and all? Humph. Oddly enough, however, Izuku felt like he had to mention something, but for the life of him, he couldn't remember what. Legion. After some mandatory recovery time instituted by Recovery Girl, All Might pulled some strings and managed to get a training room in UA for themselves. Izuku had to very much force himself not to fangasm. Unfortunately for him, none of the other heroes were here, so he was only able to get Recovery Girl's autograph. Oh well, maybe when he made it in. It was during their training that Django made a discovery. Okay, so I just found something out. Whatever it was that you did when you first used OFA just opened up a section of the mindscape, an armory, Django said as Izuku did some fight training with All Might. Because of this, I sincerely recommend changing your quirk name, 'cause clone isn't going to cut it. He pulled out from behind him a long rifle, a shorter carbine, and a pair of pistols. Wow, So my quirk makes weapons too? That is slightly concerning. It seems that either there is more to your quirk than meets the eye, or One for All has already boosted it to incorporate other military-related items. Were there any signs of vehicles? All Might asked as he crossed his arms in concern. So far, no, but another thing I've noticed is that the clones are awake. Ever since the blackout, though they've been unable to break through, they've started taking the time to train, especially with the weapons available, Django said as he set them down on a small table that was set to the side. They look different than standard weaponry. They don't look like they fire any type of ballistics. All Might noted as he inspected them. That's 'cause they don't look, Django said as he grabbed a pistol and shot at one of the walls. A bright blue bolt of energy fired out and impacted, leaving a hole with a scorch mark. Okay, that is certainly very dangerous, not exactly suitable for hero work. Snipe's bullets don't even do that much damage, All Might said as they inspected the hole. It went over a meter through regular concrete, and most likely would penetrate at least 1/4 of a meter through other reinforced materials. Perhaps less if it was metals, but still. I can reduce the settings, Django said while fiddling with the pistol. A few other shots each showed less and less damage until, oddly enough, a ring of energy came out and did no damage at all. Huh. I guess this is the lowest setting, I wonder, Django said before turning and shooting All Might.
Django.
Izuku cried out as the man stumbled and fell on his rear. All Might groaned, somewhat disoriented but still conscious and poofing back to his skinny form. Raising a hand to his head in an attempt to assuage the headache he lightly glared at Django. A little more warning next time? He sarcastically asked before standing. It seems that setting is a stun setting. Were it anybody else, they'd be out like a light. As it is, I really don't want to transform right now. All I can say is that if you're planning on using those guns, you'll have to take a certification course with Snipe before being allowed for fieldwork and use only the stun setting. He then forced himself back to his bigger form. Feeling like a good 15 minutes got knocked out of him, he stretched a bit before fully facing the both of them. I mean it, unless absolutely necessary, such as a life or death scenario. Use only the stun setting, all right? Yes, sir. Of course, All Might. Thanks for being my test dummy, though. All Might grumbled at the remark, but acquiesced. They continued training, trying to figure out a way to get Izuku to handle at least a piece of One for All before the exams. You know, if you ever get a handle on this, it would be interesting to see if you can buff up your entire body like All Might, Django commented offhandedly as he continued working on his marksmanship. He'd taken a liking to some unique pistols he'd found in the armory and some other equipment. His comment, though, made Izuku pause before he slapped his face. I'm such a D-cut. He groaned out. Yeah, and? I've been using OFA like I use clone, but it's different. When I summon you, I just focus on a single part or place and boom, you're there. But One for All is different. I need to focus everywhere. He focused, and sure enough, sparks started to come off his body. Veins of reddish energy crisscrossed his skin, and his eyes glowed. All Might looked on with pride. His successor was finally figuring things out. He wished he could have helped more, but unfortunately, he didn't have the best experience in teaching. At least for now, I don't have to call Gran Torino. One more day, and I would have had no choice. Huh, cool. Okay, so how much can you use? Django asked as he neared. Hold up, it's too much. Right now, Izuku grunted out as he focused even more. 20, 15, 10, 7, 6 and 5. He sighed with relief and panted with exhaustion, feeling as if his body was ever so close to breaking apart just from 1/5 of the power. Even now he was still pushing it. Right now, it's 5%, lower than I'd like, but any higher and my body starts to strain. Well, it's a start. Can you hear the VOD? Django asked as he observed Izuku. Immediately, feelings of approval and encouragement filled him, and he could hear the voices praising his hard work. I wonder. Reaching out with his power, he pulled. Zwom. Haha, you did it VOD. I knew you could. Django cried out as he hugged Izuku. Right next to him was another clone who was also brightly smiling. All Might stood beside them, smiling proudly at his successor and his personal victory. CT 00-0077 Reporting for duty, sir. The clone saluted at Izuku and then stood at attention. It's great to meet you, but you'll have to get a name for yourself soon. I don't think I can summon another clone right now, so we'll have to take this time to get ready for the exam. Izuku said as they continued to train. All Might had refrained from saying what the exam was, not that Izuku would have accepted it, not wanting special treatment. So for the rest of their training, they took to working on their fighting abilities and marksmanship, along with some team strategies. Finally, however, the day came for the entrance exam, and as Izuku stood before UA's gates, he prepared himself to begin the next chapter of his journey to become a hero. Legion. Author. And that's it for this chapter. Believe me, was this interesting to get out? I've taken to listening to music involving the clones for inspiration, and I'm actually satisfied at how this came out. Special points to the first person to figure out who the new clone is. I have a special prize in mind. Again, thank you all for your support, and I'd love to hear more from you about my work. Please review and pass along any ideas or support. I also love to hear constructive criticism. Flames, just know.
Mando a translations.
VOD a brother. Ori VOD, older brother. Anytime this is used will be in reference to Izuku.
Vode I brethren.
Shabir, basically jerk, but it's far heavier. You say this if you want to pick a fight. Dankferric, I believe, is not Mando A, but rather a galactic thing. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. It's basically an exclamation of surprise/shock, with various meanings.